Hey there, welcome to the sermon preview for this week. Morgan, where are we right now?
We are on the walking path.
Yes, we are. So this is the first week that our new walking track is open. So we're out here enjoying it on this beautiful morning. I want to encourage you to come out and utilize this. It's about 0.6 miles is one lap around. So you can come do a lap or 2 or 3 or 10, how many ever you want to do, and really enjoy this space that God has blessed us with. So, Morgan, looking at our sermon passage for this week, we are continuing in our DNA series where we're looking at our values and our identity statements. So, what is the value that we're looking at this week?
Yeah, so this week we are looking at the value of love.
Yep.
Which is we are people who love God and love others.
Yes, we are people who love God and love others. And that should actually sound familiar because it's taken directly from our mission statement that we have here of loving God and loving others. So there's a really strong connection point between those two. And so for the passage this week, we are going to be looking at Matthew chapter 22, verses 34 through 40. And in this passage, kind of the way that the context around it is that the Pharisees and the Sadducees are essentially asking Jesus questions to test him, to try and trap him. And in this specific passage, the Pharisees send one guy, he's a lawyer, and they tell him to say, "Hey Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? Which of the commandments is the greatest?" Now, Jesus doesn't get trapped, and he answers this perfectly. So Morgan, what is the answer that Jesus gives the Pharisees here?
Yeah, he says to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind.
Right, so he has this first one, this first commandment, but he doesn't stop there, right? He goes on.
Yeah, and then he says to love your neighbor as yourself.
Right, so he has actually gives two answers to the question, which is incredibly important for us to understand that these two are a part of the same answer, right? There's a clear order of the first and greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, and mind. And then the second is like it, though, so there's that connection point between the two. So these two, they are separate commandments, and it's the first and the second, but they are coupled together almost to the point where they can't be separated without, you can't have one without the other. And so this idea of love is so important as we seek to live out this life of following Jesus, because we have to understand that we need to devote our life to God, and one of the ways that we do that is through how we interact with other people, right? So as we think about this passage for this week, are there any passages that we've looked at in the past that really relate well to this idea of loving your neighbor as yourself?
Yeah, the golden rule really relates to that verse.
Right, so we just looked at that in our Sermon on the Mount series, where do unto others what you would have them do unto you. And this command that Jesus is giving here is to love your neighbor as yourself. So it's really essentially one of the same, kind of the same thing in what Jesus is teaching us here, is we are to think of others just as we would think of ourselves, because the idea is like most people are going to make themselves a priority, and so Jesus is saying make other people a priority. Right. So I'm really excited for this passage. I think it's going to be really great as we dig deep into what God is trying to tell us in loving Him and loving other people, and how these are just so core and need to be a foundation of who we are as followers of Jesus. They need to be a part of our DNA. So preparing for this passage or for this sermon, look at the passage, read it in a couple different translations. It's always really helpful to have that different perspective. And then think about the idea of how has your life reflected these two greatest commandments? How have you sought to live both of these out? So looking forward to it. We'll see you then. Take care. Okay, so for Morgan, for the passage today,
I have little legs.